Welcome, IIBEC members, everyone, to the 2020 annual meeting of the members. I'm going to officially call our meeting to order this afternoon and ask Chris Giffen to read Article 21 to get us ready.
Hello, everybody. Article 21, Antitrust Compliance Policies and Procedures. Section 1, Jurisdiction. These policies and procedures apply to all meetings of the membership, board, and committees, other meetings sponsored by IIBEC, and all meetings attended by representatives of IIBEC and to IIBEC employees in all of their activities within the scope of their employment. Section 2, Prohibitions and Violations. A, discussions of price or price levels are prohibited. In addition, no discussion is permitted of any elements of a company's operation which might influence price. B, it is a violation of the antitrust laws to agree not to compete. Therefore, discussions of divisions of territories or customers or limitations on the nature of business carried on or products sold are not permitted. Boycotts in any form are unlawful. Discussions relating to boycotts is prohibited, including discussions about blacklisting or unfavorable reports about particular companies, including their financial situation.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to start off with a brief report. You all know that my proclivity is for brevity, and I'm going to stay in character. This is odd. I'm sitting in my home here instead of in a large conference room in Houston, but somehow we're all together, and hopefully this holds our place until we can actually come together for another meeting of the members next year in Phoenix. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It's great to have everyone here. This is, I'm told, a record turnout for the meeting of the members. I'm very pleased that even though I'm the first president to not actually have a convention, I will also be the first to have a meeting of the members of nearly double the size of the normal attendance. So let's get underway here. First thing I want to say is that I'm thankful and I'm grateful to all of you for the opportunity to be a part of the stewardship of this organization for the past few years. For me, it's been an enriching experience on many levels. Working with my fellow board of directors and executive committee members on our initiatives has been encouraging and edifying. This group of people are great to work with. Interacting with IIBEC members, fielding questions and concerns, and I've got those emails and calls weekly, sometimes almost daily, trying to help resolve issues or field questions. That's been one of my favorite parts of the job, being able to interact one-on-one with members, and I'm appreciative of that opportunity. And finally, as I've noted many times and will continue to note, the IIBEC professional staff are world-class, absolutely top shelf, and I've been continually impressed with their skills, with their dedication, and their esprit de corps. And one of the things that I'll miss most is regularly working with the staff. The current state of our world is uncertain. Here we are connecting electronically for our meeting of the members, and IIBEC is not untouched by these events. Obviously, our convention is impacted. Many of our events will be impacted. However, I expect that with the excellent leadership team in place, both volunteers and professional staff, we still have a bright future in place for our organization. Don't put away those shades yet. Just a few things I want to share with you about some of our successes over the past year. Remember, we have a new brand. We are now IIBEC, and it seems to have successfully taken hold. We have a new Executive Vice President CEO, Brian Palish, who continues to come back every day. Brian has told me that when it's time for him to leave, he will not do so by phone or email, but he'll make a trip out here to the left coast and talk with me about it personally, and so far he hasn't scheduled any flights to Seattle, so I'm grateful for that. Thank you, Brian, for your steadfast and excellent leadership. We have a brand new update of our manual of practice just completed within the past couple of weeks, and it's available to members. It's an excellent resource for us. It's something that we all can be proud of. The group who put that together, the task force, is rather large. That was intentional because there's a lot of heavy lifting involved in this thing. And Kenrick Hartman and Rick Craig are particularly to be noted for herding of that big group of cats. You'll hear more about that later, and certainly at the awards ceremony once we get together again. We have a new credential, building enclosure commissioning credential that we expect to be at the forefront of our industry. That's coming up live shortly. I would say within a matter of weeks, but the first exams, I think, and Brian will speak to this a little later, the first exams are coming up a little later this year. We have an agreement with the National Research Council of Canada to co-host the 2020 International Conference on Building Envelope Systems and Technology, IIBEC, in Vancouver, British Columbia. If you all are interested in building enclosure technology, come join us on the West Coast in August, late August. This year, Vancouver, it's a wonderful time to visit the Northwest. Vancouver is an awesome city. I'm planning on being there. Come join me for that. We have a brand new committee that's dedicated to codes and standards related to our industry. Our new Director of Technical Services, Emily Lorenz, is leading this group, and they will be dedicated to input and advocacy on particularly codes and standards for us, for our organization. Our annual meeting of the members, as I just mentioned, has a record attendance. Thank you all for virtually coming, for being here. Brian may talk about this or he may not. We have a new and improved accounting program at our headquarters office, which will facilitate improved budget management. And this may not seem like a big deal, especially if you're not involved in the day-to-day operations, but it kind of is a big deal because it gives our staff and our volunteer leadership better access to information for planning and execution of our initiatives, and for Brian, management of the staff in Raleigh. Speaking of which, we will be moving to a new location in Raleigh this year, and Brian may talk about that as well. So identifying a space in Raleigh and relocating our offices to a new space for our professional staff, we expect is going to actually improve the environment, improve the ability for our staff to do what they need to do. One of the things that I want to, some of you remember this from last year, the turnover chain. And if you are involved at all in Twitter or Instagram, we've had a little fun with that. The turnover chain, as soon as we finish here today, that's going into a box, carefully wrapped and being shipped to Charlotte, North Carolina, where Scott Hinesley is going to take over custody of that. Scott Hinesley is a proven IIBEC leader, and I am absolutely confident that he will not only provide outstanding stewardship during the coming year of his presidency, but that IIBEC will flourish under his guidance. Like I said earlier, keep those shades handy. We're going to be needing them. Everyone, thank you very much. I think this is the point where I get to introduce Ted Sheridan, Second Vice President, to give us an update on the annual convention, and this should be interesting. Ted, share some things with us if you would, please.
Thank you, Bob. My job as Second Vice President is to report on the convention. So COVID-19, that terminates my report. Thank you. No, I do have some more details. At the beginning of March, we were on track to have probably the best attendance at any convention we've had. We were also on track to sell more exhibit space and have more overall involvement. But to quote Joni Mitchell, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Now we're all looking around wondering what we're supposed to be doing. How do we get our CEHs that we'd normally get at the convention? What about our holiday plans that we missed with the convention? What about that fantastic trade show? What about all of our committee meetings? What about this meeting of the members? And all those social aspects, the camaraderie that we all get to experience when we come to the convention. Well, fortunately, we've got a great staff at headquarters, and some of the events, like our event today, the meeting of the members, can go ahead as it legally needs to. And that's a great a grace for us. The other things, well, we'll talk about them a little bit more. I'm going to touch on them, and Brian may touch on them as well. Some of you might ask, why wasn't the decision to postpone the convention made a little earlier? And Brian may shed more on this, but as you can imagine, there's a huge financial implication to those sorts of decisions, one that requires a lot of negotiation with existing contracts, and our staff worked furiously to do the best it could for IIBEC. So I guess you don't know what you got till it's gone. Karen, Brian, Melanie, and the staff know all too well what they had, because now they're going to have to try to reproduce it later this year. At the same time, they're going to have to minimize the financial impact and retain as much of the planned convention as they can. So I know there's been great discussion about available dates, talk with all the sponsors and exhibitors. There'll be issues with speaker availability that we've got to iron out. Even some of the presentations may not be as current as they were 6 months earlier. So I know, speaking with our folks, we've got a lot of things locked down, and we're working on other things, and I think we'll have some very encouraging announcements for you coming up. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, that there is going to be a convention this fall, that our biggest sponsors have indicated they're going to participate. And even the same timing during the week is going to try to be respected. Of course, we're going to have a few gaps, such as, when we normally have the meeting of the members, we will have already knocked that off our to-do list. So it may be a little bit more free time to do some other things. And I guess, I know it's a strong convention. We had 80 presenters who wanted to present their papers, and only 24 were accepted. So there's a fantastic educational array there. And we're going to get to present pretty much all of that again coming up. That's my report. I guess now I'm going to turn it over to the report of the Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Chris Giffen.
Thank you. 2019 was a very good year for IIBEC. Revenue in 2019 was $4,320,034. Expenses in 2019 were lower than what was budgeted, and they were at $4,451,514. Expenses exceeded revenues by $131,480, and that was really sort of a planned deficit that we were working under. The deficit was a result of a couple special projects that were undertaken in 2019, and these included some of the rebranding costs to switch to the new IIBEC brand. Bob had mentioned the building certification program, which has been kind of ongoing and be ready to release shortly. And then the development of the manual of practice, which to date actually has generated approximately $27,000 in unplanned revenue for IIBEC. So things actually are looking very well, and we're looking very well for IIBEC. 2019 revenues, we increased membership, we increased registration, and we increased the educational component. Bob had mentioned that we finished the transition to a new accounting firm, and we have 1 year under our belt with a new chart of accounts, which will be able to track revenue and expenses by department more accurately, so we can actually see where we are making money and where we need to focus on some other things. IBEC does have a good cash reserve, which should allow us to weather this current virus storm. Mr. Palish will discuss more when he presents about the state of the association, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
At this point during the meeting, I'd like to invite David Hahn, our current nominating committee chair, to bring a report from the nominating committee, including comments from candidates and the election of officers. David?
Thank you, Bob. I'd like to say thank you to the members of the nominating committee. Things had to be modified a bit this year in light of not being able to hold the convention in our normal annual meeting, but we are a resilient and flexible group, and so we'll go ahead and proceed with the, I would say, truncated but thorough discussion concerning the election of officers. You just heard from Ted Sheridan and Chris Giffen, and they indicated they did not want to speak further today, but Amy Peavy, the candidate for Secretary Treasurer, would like to address those attending this meeting. So Amy, the mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Hello, everybody. I'm Amy Peavy. I'm the Director of Building Enclosures and Forensics at D. Simone Consulting Engineers. Thank you for attending today's meeting. I'm glad to hear it's record attendance. Houston always has a good turnout, but apparently virtually we have a much better turnout. A bit about me. I'm a Texan through and through, born in Austin originally and now reside in Houston. I studied architectural engineering at the University of Texas at Austin and have basically been doing building enclosure consulting since I graduated. Shortly after I graduated, I mostly did forensics, and then very soon started applying that forensic knowledge to new design as well, and now do both forensics, new design, as well as litigation support. I initially heard of IIBEC when I was taking the RRO, and I joined IIBEC, which was formerly RCI, shortly thereafter. And basically, it's been pretty near and dear to my heart ever since, because it made a huge impact on my career within the building enclosure industry. I became a more well-rounded engineer and a better building envelope consultant because of IIBEC. I can directly attribute my increased technical knowledge and skills, as well as my more well-rounded technical knowledge and skills within the building enclosure practice to IIBEC, their programs, the members, and the network that I've grown through my participation with IIBEC. I've been honored over the years to serve within IIBEC, both locally here in Region 4 with the Gulf Coast chapter and other chapters, as well as nationally within the symposium and conference committees, as well as serving as the symposium chairwoman. I'm very excited to be able to continue to serve the IIBEC organization within the role on the executive committee. And I really look forward to supporting it, just as IIBEC has supported me throughout my entire career. Specifically, I look forward to supporting the development of IIBEC as the leader within the building enclosure industry. By supporting and empowering IIBEC's programs and the membership across the US and Canada, we will continue to grow as the primary authority within the building enclosure practice. As we mentioned, NRCIA is going to be combining for the IC Best within Vancouver in late August, early September. Very excited to be presenting at that symposium that's upcoming. And I look forward to the continued effort to foster our development within the building enclosure industry, as well as the creation of the policies and standards within the industry. Excited to hear about our new committees and the growth of our current committees, and fostering their development so that one day the building envelope is recognized just as much as MEP, geotech, civil, and structural are recognized. So I look forward to being a part of IBEC's future, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. This year, things had to be conducted slightly differently. So I wanted to let you know that the candidates that were running for electable positions, Ted Sheridan for first vice president, Chris Giffen for second vice president, and Amy Peavy for secretary treasurer position. And in light of this venue and the safety of our membership, our election was conducted electronically. We had the first round of electronic voting, and then realizing that this meeting would be held on a virtual basis, a second round of electronic voting was allowed to assure any that had previously planned to vote at this meeting would have the opportunity to vote. All of that voting has closed. Both periods of voting is closed. And the counting of the votes will be very brief, because that was, the votes were received and counted and then reported to us by direct vote. So we do have a new executive committee for IBEC. Secretary Treasurer, Amy Peavy. Second Vice President, Chris Giffen. First Vice President, Ted Sheridan. And Scott Hinesley, President. And I'll add a footnote for our immediate past president, Bob Card. Congratulations to all of you, and I thank you in advance for your service to IBEC. Again, in light of this venue, I will ask that to keep tradition and stay in accordance with our bylaws, that without objection, the voting records be destroyed. Thank you all for your participation, and thank all of you who participated in the election process. Bob?
I'd like to invite CEO, Executive Vice President Brian Palish to present his report on the state of the association. Brian?
Thank you very much. And I would say, sitting here in Virginia, thank you for all that you've done for IBEC this year. I have had the great pleasure of getting to know you and spending a good amount of time with you. So, and I look forward to doing that moving forward. And no, there are no trips planned anytime soon to Seattle to visit you to talk about my future. I would say, as I've been starting a lot of my presentations, and I see from some of the people on the phone, I've met many of you. This is day 294 of my tenure at IBEC, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here. And I wish that we were in Houston. I have some good memories of Houston as the Washington Nationals beat the Astros this year, regardless of trash cans and any banging that went on. So I wish we were all in Houston, although I know that we are much safer where we are right now, and my hope for all of us is that we remain that way. I want to go through quickly, next slide, Katie, walking through a little bit about where we are as IBEC. And the first slide is just a little recitation of some of the stuff that Bob talked about. But the reality is we have a new leadership team at IBEC. I'm pleased that Melanie Elwell was promoted right before I got to IBEC. She's been doing a tremendous job. I have a new executive assistant, Carolyn Baber. Some of you have encountered her, and she's doing a great job for IBEC. I'm pleased to be here. I've spent my last 20 years prior to joining you all in working for the American Society of Civil Engineers. So I know a little bit about building enclosures and a little bit about engineering and maybe a little less about architecture, but I'm pleased to be with a fine group of professionals that are trying to advance their work forward on behalf of building owners and this great profession. So I'm thrilled with that. As Bob mentioned, we have made some changes at IIBEC with regard to operations. We have a new accounting group that is working with us, and I'm looking forward to a new auditor that is in the middle of their work. They've been slowed down by COVID, as many people have, and we will have audited financial statements in the coming months. I would note, as Bob said, that we are going to be moving in Raleigh shortly. Those of you who are coming possibly for the October leadership conference in October, you'll be able to see those new offices. We are in the final stages of backing and forthing with landlords. I'm sure some of you guys have done that before. So we don't have much to announce today, other than that we will be moving, and that'll take place on or around October 1st of this year, so 2020. Next slide, Katie. One of the benefits of my starting in June of this year is that I have not yet had to add to the swear jar, as they call it, of calling IIBEC RCI. It has always been IIBEC to me, and I'm thrilled with, as I said, joining the organization and sort of leading and finishing up the rebranding process. To date, we now have all chapters have been rebranded, and we now have a brand new website, as everyone has, I hope, seen at IIBEC.org. That launched at the very beginning of the year, and we are really pleased with that. If you have issues or questions about the website, please feel free to email the IIBEC staff team, and we will address any of those issues moving forward. Next slide. Communications. We continue to publish 11 times a year the flagship publication for the organization called Interface. This year it featured 45 technical authors. We've increased significantly the amount of female authors as part of that group of people who are lending their technical expertise and time to provide those great resources to IIBEC members. We've also started recently a podcast where we are sort of turning one article a month into a audio book, if you will. So if you don't find you have the time to read Interface, you can at least listen to one article a month on your drive into work. And so the other thing we've added this year is a column on ethics. That's going to be seen every quarter, so that we spend a little bit more time on our code of ethics, and that is going to actually also be a new focus of our strategic plan. As you can also see on this slide, we've been increasing our followers and participants on things like LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and you're certainly all welcome to follow me on Twitter. It's moderately boring, but I do tweet about IIBEC time and again. Next slide, Kate. Technical services is an area where we've had a number of successes this year. The first is that we've hired a new technical services director, Emily Lorenz. We stole her from the Precast Concrete Institute, and she brings significant amount of experience on building enclosure issues. She's a PE and has a master's degree in structural engineering. And we are thrilled that she is here helping us on codes and standards and other technical issues. As you can see there, we've put forward a couple of technical advisories this year, one on fiber cement siding and the other one on electronic leak detection. And frankly, the largest success, and it's a success that will be released in the coming days, is the third edition of the Manual of Practice. There is a tireless group of individuals who has worked hours upon hours to make this happen. Rick Craig and Kenrick have done monumental amounts of work as a committee to make this thing happen. And if we were in Houston, I'd be bringing them up to the stage right now to have all of you give them a round of applause. The document is available for purchase if you go to the IIBEC website. Those of you who are on the call today, you will get a $50 off coupon for that publication. So I urge you to use that and buy it today. Next slide, Katie. Additionally, IIBEC's membership continues to grow. We had our significant growth in membership in the last year. It was 4%. We are over 3,600 members active in the organization, and that number just continues to again creep up month after month. We've had strong membership growth in January and February of this year, and we hope that that will continue through the rest of 2020, although like everyone else, we've been thrown a bit of a curveball with the COVID-19 situation. Next slide. In addition to that, registrations is also growing, and we finally clicked over this year to 2,000 registrants, total registrations for IBEC. That is a pretty significant achievement in what we've been trying to do as IIBEC, and we are thrilled. In addition, you can see on the slide there, we retain about 98% of the folks who actually get that those designations, and I presume it's because it's not so simple to get, so you might so it makes sense to keep it. And we, in addition to that, as I think one of the questions will come up, we're looking at ways to provide you additional CEHs. And give you some extra time to get the CEHs during this, during a time when, frankly, you were all going to get your CEHs or would have just completed them at the meeting in Houston. So we're working on that, and you'll see some more information on that shortly. Next slide. Next is something that we've been working on for the past year, which is the Certified Building Enclosure Commissioning Provider Certification, or as I like to say, CBEC XP. That's a little bit easier to say than all those words. And this is our first venture into an actual ISO accredited certification. That's part of the ISO 17024. We're following that guideline to get this activity certified by ISO. And that will make it a certification that is very portable and very sought after in the industry. We are in the process right now of finishing the exam portion of that. We hope that that exam portion will be done in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And the application portion should be done again also within about the next month, and that should be made available to all of you through the IIBEC website within the next month is our hope. And then once the exam is finished, again within 6 to 8 weeks, we hope by the beginning of the summer, by June, folks will be able to start taking this exam and passing the exam and then becoming certified as a CBE CXP. So next slide. In addition to the work that we've been doing at the national level, we have 27 chapters and 10 branches spread around the country and up in Canada, providing training and education and hands-on learning, in addition to just networking for IIBEC members, again, in all those locations. I've been thrilled to participate in a number of chapter events. I think I've clicked over and done about 10 chapter events so far. I've had a few canceled in the last couple of weeks as a result of travel being suspended and meetings being suspended. But once we can get travel back up and running in both the US and Canada, I look forward to continuing my work and going and visiting all of you and meeting you at the chapter level. Tara Cottle, who was previously my executive assistant, has been promoted, and she's the new manager of chapter and region relations. And I would urge any of you who are chapter folks who are looking for some assistance or some ideas to reach out to Tara, and she will provide you a wealth of good ideas and things that you can do to improve your chapter and make it grow. Next slide, thank you. Industry affairs. In addition to all the other work that we are doing, we continue to have a role in engaging with our legislators at the federal, state, and local level, and beginning to do so at the provincial level in Canada. IIBEC has, as many of you know, we have a lobbyist that we've hired in Washington, D.C., and a group of us have gone to Washington a number of times to advance IIBEC's interests in Washington, D.C. Last April, about a year ago, 76 members took part in the second annual roofing day. Unfortunately, the third annual roofing day, which was scheduled for later in April, has been canceled for the year, and we look forward to picking that up next year. In addition, in Cobb County, Georgia, we successfully worked with local officials to take another look at how they were using cooperative purchasing on roofing projects, and they have since decided to re-examine that and stop doing that for now. In addition, this year in Virginia, there were a couple of bills that were going to try to undo some work that a number of groups, including IIBEC, had done a couple of years ago on cooperative purchasing, and both of those bills died in committee. So we are continuing to be active in public policy, not only in building relationships with legislators, but also building relationships with organizations in Washington, D.C. like AIA, ASCE, the National Institute of Building Sciences, and others. Next slide. And last but not least is the work that's being done by the IIBEC Foundations. The IIBEC Foundations raised a large amount of money this year, or last year, $305,000, with a large number of new donors, which means we're headed in the right direction on those activities. In addition, and more importantly to the money that was raised, was some of the work that was done by the foundation. We were able to fund some research at Virginia Tech on the thermal bridging of roof fasteners. We did collaboration with Spry, a research collaboration with Spry on some R-value of assembly materials, and then worked with the University of Texas at Austin for predicting crack geometry. And some of you know what that means. I do not, but I'm not an engineer. And in addition to that, another piece that the foundation works on is providing scholarships to students to attend the IIBEC annual convention. Last year, there were 24 students from 14 schools that attended the 2019 convention. I'm a little bit sad to say that this year was going to be a tremendous year. So Ted talked about how we were breaking records in attendance, et cetera. We were going to have 50 students come to the IIBEC convention in Houston to find out more about our profession and what you all do as professionals in this industry. Obviously, that's been delayed, and we are hopeful that they will join us in Phoenix next year or at a rescheduled event later this year. So we are thrilled that that is continuing, and we're thrilled that interest exists from the local schools and from students to actually find out more about what our folks do. And with that, I will say this about the current situation. I don't have a slide on this with regards to the COVID-19. A couple of things from your perspective. All of IIBEC's staff are in fact working remotely at this point. And we are continuing on with the services and products that we provide to you, even though we're not currently in our offices. The state of North Carolina, we have a stay-at-home order until the end of April. And so we are going to probably do that and follow that, or not probably, we will follow the governor's order. But in addition to that, we're trying to come up with ways that we can provide you some additional resources that you can use while many of us are not able to access things in the normal way, if you will, like go to a local chapter meeting. So you'll see some additional online education from IIBEC. You'll see some additional resources that we're going to try to put online. And if folks have ideas for that, or comments or thoughts that you think we should be looking at, please feel free to send those to us. You can put them in the question board that's being offered right now during the webinar, or just email them or go on the website, and there's a way to provide some comments to us. I think we're all sort of learning from this, the situation that we're in, and trying to learn on the fly in terms of some of the things that we can do to provide better value to our members. And we want to make sure that we're doing that for all of you. So if you've got ideas, please send those in. And with that, I'm going to end my part of the discussion. And now it's time for member comments, I think, Bob.
Thank you, Brian. Let's start this. I want to start this section by saying that normally we have about 200 to 250 attendees at the annual meeting of the members. Our bylaws require that we have 10% of voting eligible members to constitute a quorum. Looking at the tally board that's in front of me now, I see that currently we're at 470 attendees. And so we're very confident that we have a number that enables us to comply with our bylaws and for this to be an official and sanctioned meeting of the members. I want to start out with just a couple of things, comments that were sent in early. How is COVID-19 impacting IIBEC? Brian talked about that at some length. The annual convention this year, obviously we're not together in Houston, but the staff are working furiously on a revised date. And at this point, it's come down to contracts and contract amendments. I can't say too much or Brian will send a hit squad out to me, but stay tuned to your email, to the website. There is more information coming on that. Let me get back here to the I've got a bunch of windows open here on my little laptop screen. Okay, Brian, do you have some more comments that I don't see? While I'm waiting for Brian, Sid Hankins has asked about details for the Phoenix convention. Yes, Sid, if you go on the website, there will be some information there about next year's convention, March of 2021 in Phoenix, Arizona. And barring natural disaster, we will all expect to be there together again in the sunny climate of Phoenix. But check the website for that information.
Bob, I would just say relating to the annual meeting next year, I believe the dates, and we have a slide at the very end. I believe it's March 4 through 8.
Great.
If I'm not mistaken, although Katie can get that slide up real quick.
There it is.
And Bob, I too am looking for my list of questions. Here we go. So one of the other questions that we feel like has come in or has been discussed or wanting to be discussed is, what does IIBEC do? What are we going to do about the foundation's auction? The auction will proceed as usual during the postponed convention. There may be in the near term, we're looking at also the possibility of doing some online piece of that auction. There were a few things that were donated that had a fuse attached to them, so a date that they were expiring. And so if that's the case, we will absolutely get those in an online fashion and proceed that way. In addition, another question that we thought would come up is, and I did mention this in my remarks briefly, but now I have the actual information in front of me. How will IIBEC be dealing with the continuing education requirements for this year? Let me break this down in a couple ways. For those of you who needed continuing education hours for their year ending December 31st of 2019, the grace period of March 31st, 2020, which would be tomorrow, has been extended until the end of the year, which is December 31st of 2020. For those needing, for registrants needing CEHs through this year, in other words, for the year ending December 31st, 2020, again, self-report during the year. There is a 3-month grace period that will extend to March of 2021. At this point, we're not quite ready to say we're going to extend the time for those for the events for this year, if you will, for the CEHs for this year. I would remind everyone, by simply logging on today and listening to Bob and I and others talk, you got one CEH, which could be the easiest CEH you've ever gotten. Please contact our registration department if you have any questions, and we are absolutely willing to work with what we think is unprecedented times. and we don't want anyone to lose their registration for lack of a few CEHs during this time when it's been a strange and unprecedented at best. In addition, if you're looking to knock some of these out, instead of watching Netflix or Hulu, we have a long list of online education offerings that you can get from IBEC's learning portal already, and you can do some of them that way as well. So even though the annual convention has not occurred as it should, there are ways to get your CEHs in without having attended the convention.
Thank you, Brian. Someone asked about IBEC ability to get exemptions for members as life-sustaining businesses, or as from most of the states that I'm familiar with, essential businesses. This is really, it's really tricky. It's a state-by-state thing. For example, in my own state, in Washington, we had a few days after the governor's executive order where construction was considered an essential business. And then about midweek last week, they turned around and shut that down, except for critical projects, nuclear power plants, protection of work that's already underway, healthcare facilities, that sort of thing. Construction is basically shut down here in the upper left corner. And IBEC, I'm not sure there's much that the organization can do about that, because again, it's really on a state-by-state basis. That would be something to bring up with your, possibly with your local ACEC chapter, or with the licensing folks at the state level, for those of you with architecture or engineering credentials.
Bob, I'll just add that we are in the process at the national level of signing on to a letter with a number of the construction organizations and engineering and architecture groups that is going to go to the president to ask him to ensure that he designates the work that you all are doing as life-sustaining, whatever the terminology that they're using to make them, to allow some of this work to proceed. I would suggest, and I think we are about to go live with a survey to our members. If you have examples of reasons why that should be, so when I think about this, I think about construction projects or design, the work that you're doing, that if you left it, if you abandon it in process, it could have a detrimental effect on the long term of that project. Either, I mean, the obvious one is you're not finished with the roof and it rains. I know that's a little bit simplistic, but that is something that probably some of these legislators can understand. Or just some projects, there may be a safety reason not to leave it in the state that it's in, and at least allowing an orderly process to stop a job, rather than just an arbitrary, you need to be off the job site by noon today, is probably, there needs to be somewhere in between of those things. IBEC is working also to put together a webinar. This will be a free webinar. I hope to be able to announce that in the next day or two, where we would have a couple of people on a webinar explaining what some of these orders mean and in what various locations. We probably won't have all 50 states covered, because I'm not sure that I've seen anyone with a 50-state list so far. In addition to that, I'm trying to get some more information that'll be put on the website. There's been a couple of federal pieces of legislation passed that many small businesses can utilize to help their businesses in a time of clearly of slowdown at a minimum, if not all out stoppage in some other instances. And so we're trying to figure out what resources may be available to IBEC members, and get a comprehensive list, or as good a list as we can, so that some of you don't have to go searching for that. And if we can help you in that, we want to be able to do that, to provide you those resources and how you can access the federal programs that are going to be in existence to not only help your business, but also your employees. So when we get that stuff, that process started, once they signed that bill, I think it was on Thursday, and that's all being put together as well. So we're working on it, and we appreciate your patience.
And one of the comments that I've just seen from one of our Canadian members, I'm not sure how that response is proceeding across Canada, but my guess is that it's province by province, or as my friend Ted would say, province by province. Check with provincial authorities on how that relates to your local area, and your region director will be able to help you potentially connect with some of those resources, and certainly Ted Sheridan will also have access to some of that information as well. But when the call comes out for survey, I want to encourage Canadian members to the greatest extent possible participate in that, so that we can have good solid information from Canada as well. Brian, it looks like this one is for you. AIA accreditation for IBEC education events.
So as I understand this, that if you work with our education folks, I believe, Eric, that we can get you slotted under our exemption, and I'm working on that, and I mean, exemption is probably not the right word, but under our umbrella, where all IBEC events nationally are submitted to AIA, and they're approved for their learning credits, if you will, their CEHs. I believe we can. There's a little bit of administrative work, but I think we can make that happen for our local groups as well.
We had what I felt was a very productive meeting with AIA folks in Washington, D.C. when we were there last. And from the response that they gave us, they seemed interested in working with us in many areas, not the least of which would be education. I was encouraged by that. Mark, a universal statement for state application for exemptions. I think this would be a part of the effort that we're working on with the legislative bodies that Brian described. There should be something come out of that would kind of fit into that spot. Looks like at some point we will have tracked the questions and the responses, and so if all of this is kind of flying by you quickly, later on it's possible we could come back, or you could come back with the background information. Hopefully we'll be able to provide that in some sort of format so that you don't have to try and scribble notes quickly where you are.
Yeah, so folks know if there's a question on here that we haven't answered, we will get that question answered for you, and either directly, or if it's one that's a more broadly appealing question, we'll make sure that we get that up on the website. There will be an FAQ page on the website for some of the issues that we're dealing with right now, and we will have that available so everyone can scroll through and see what some of the questions are, and then what our answers may be.
Okay, it looks like, yes, it looks like we have the ability to create a report, and so that'll be, the staff will be working to put that together, I think, so that it's available afterward.
Yep.
Jean-Guy, yes. I'm not sure if you missed, previously there was a comment from Jean-Guy Levesque, a CEH holiday. We actually are postponing the deadline for CEHs for the registrations, Jean-Guy, and so for those credits that expired at the end of 2019, you actually have until the end of 2020 to renew those, and then the same for next year. So there is quite a bit of grace being applied. In addition, one of the things that I've noticed is that my email inbox has been rather full lately with offers and opportunities for online education. Providers are taking advantage of this opportunity to get in front of us with education and credits. And so take advantage of some of those, especially if it's someone that you're familiar with and that you trust.
Though I'd say none of the education is as good as what IIBEC provides, Bob. So
Unquestionably. And as Ted, I think, mentioned, the reconstituted convention that we're working on presenting later this year will certainly have most or all of the presentations that were slated to be provided this weekend. And so, hang in there. That information is coming, and in the fall, we should be able to get all of those opportunities to you for CEH credits. Boy, okay. There's a question about lead times. The effect of this situation on lead times for material orders from manufacturers. And honestly, my guess is, and this would just be a guess based on what I know about the manufacturing processes, that in some way, shape, or form, there will be an impact. Not sure what it is exactly. If you've got projects that are still active or projects that have been specified, tendered, bid, what have you, it would be prudent to check with your connection, your representative for those manufacturers, and verify whether material will be available for those. A question from Greg. Nice to see you, Greg. Thanks for joining us. The fall convention will be in Houston. So it's the same convention, slightly truncated, slightly later in the year, but same location, Marriott Marquis downtown and the Houston Convention Center. We're just pushing it back to a later part of the year.
okay, Bob,
Go ahead.
I think we're about at the end of questions. So now it's time. I mean, and if folks want to continue to throw questions in that box, I would say great. And we will continue the staff will continue to answer them while we're introducing the new board and then letting the president-elect speak. Or the president, for he's not even the president-elect, he's the president. Oops. Sorry, Scott.
Prezi Scott. Yes, by all means, continue to throw your questions at us, and we'll compile those and try to field them best we can, and get back to you with responses that hopefully will address those. I want to, at this time, take this opportunity to introduce to you, if I can find them, the 2020-2021 Executive Committee and Board of Directors. That will include President, here they are, President Scott Hinesley, First Vice President Ted Sheridan, Second Vice President Christopher Giffen, or Chris, as he's known on the golf course, Amy Peavy, our shiny new Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Irrelevant, immediate past President, Michael Violette, Region 1 Director, Chris Dawkins, Region 2 Director, Gene Keaton, Region 3, Neil Johnson, Region 4, Simon Zinkowitz, Region 5, Bert Carver, Region 6. Bert's the only new Region Director, new board member coming on this year. And coming back again for a second term is Jennifer Hogan, Region 7 Director. So welcome to the 2020-2021 Board of Directors. President Scott Hinesley, I will shortly be packing up the chain and the, here it is, the pin, and shipping those to you, my friend. and it will be my distinct pleasure to do so. Scott, take it away, El Presidente.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. I will, I'll be standing outside my door waiting for the mailman to deliver that. First off, I want to welcome all of you all to my kitchen in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina. It's certainly not how I envisioned kicking off my term as president of IIBEC. I would much rather have been face-to-face with you all in Houston, but unfortunately, that's not possible. But I want to take a little different tone. There's so much bad news around us that I would rather talk a little bit about some of the good things that are going on, and maybe give you some ideas for things you can concentrate on in this time. So as we talked about earlier, there are a lot of areas that have shelter-in-place orders, but there is still some work going on. Some of the local municipalities, provinces, states, counties have deemed construction services, engineering, architecture, consulting services as essential business practices. So there are some projects that are continuing. There aren't complete shutdowns everywhere throughout North America. As Bob said, Washington had shut down a lot of projects, but there are efforts to try to get those up and running again, because we do need to get those projects running, and we do need the services that our members provide to continue. But you know, before all of this started, the economies in North America were strong. So we will get to the other side of this, and there will be an uptick in the services that we provide. So I'm extremely optimistic about that. Additionally, because of the policies that my predecessors at IIBEC had established, IIBEC's in a good position to weather the storm. Brian and his team, they've done a fantastic job of improvising on the fly to make sure that the operations are able to continue. As he mentioned, they're all working from home, but they're also providing some additional opportunities for you to get continuing education online. They were quick to work with the Marriott in Houston and the Convention Center to minimize the financial impact of this postponement of the convention. And as I mentioned, they're close to getting a plan together for something later in the year. So stay tuned for that. We will keep you in the loop on that. The last convention, we welcomed Jennifer Hogan as the first ever female board member of the IIBEC Board of Directors. It was sort of a monumental step for our organization. And this year, we welcome Amy as the first female executive committee member for IIBEC. Amy, I've known her for a long time. She's a very close friend of mine, and I look forward to what Amy brings to the board. And I think she's going to be a tremendous asset right out of the gate. I'm sad to see Mike Clark finally his 7 years of service to IIBEC as region director, and then through the ranks as president, and then most recently immediate past president. I'm sad to see that come to an end. I've gotten to know Mike and Kitty extremely well over the past few years. My wife and I have thoroughly enjoyed hanging out with them at IIBEC functions. Unfortunately, we won't be hanging out as board brethren, but certainly look forward to additional opportunities to see Mike and Kitty. Mike has done a fabulous job for the organization, and his efforts are paying off. I'm sad to not be able to give Bob Card his proper send-off. Hopefully we can do that later this year, but Bob is, and you can tell from the calls, Bob is a tremendous voice of reason. He's been a great leader of the organization over the past year. We've had several mini crises, and he's helped to calm my anxiety with his calm demeanor and just voice of reason. Bob has done a fabulous job for IIBEC, and I look forward to seeing you soon, Bob, to give you the proper send-off. So with everything going on, there's a lot that we can't control, and we might tend to get fixated on that. And I want to encourage you to not spend too much time thinking about the things that you can't control. We need to concentrate on the things that we do have influence over, that we can change. And one of the most important things that I think we need to do is maybe disconnect from the static around us. We need to worry about our personal well-being. We need to take time away from the newspapers, the internet, and the news. Read a book, take a walk, watch a movie, do something just to take your mind off of it, because continually watching the news and the bad reports, that's not something that we can change. Additionally, and I know you've heard it a billion times, please continue to practice hygiene. Wash your hands, protect yourself, distance yourself from others. If you happen to show any signs of any illness, quarantine yourself, stay away from everybody. Don't become a carrier and someone who can affect others who may be more vulnerable than what you are. As we mentioned earlier, with some of these stay-in-place orders, but construction services being allowed to continue, make sure that you understand what the orders are. These aren't get-out-of-house-free cards. These are to be taken very seriously. Practice all of the safety requirements while performing these. This could easily be a luxury, and luxury is probably the wrong word, but this could easily be a luxury that can be taken away from us if it's abused. So be sure to understand what the restrictions are and be sure to adhere to all of them. Additionally, check on your friends and your neighbors. Call them. You know, just a simple phone call could change the trajectory of someone's day. So if you have neighbors that you haven't heard from recently, just call them. Ask them if there's a way you can help them out, even remotely. There's a lot you can do for people, but just the simple fact of making a phone call could be enough to change that person's day. And then take care of your family. You know, your family is as good a medicine as anything, but we're all feeling stressed out. I'm trying to hide my level of stress from my family. And it's actually a good diversion to hang out with them. We've not kicked them out of the house, the kids out of the house yet. But it's good to just spend some downtime, quality time with your family, watching a show or just talking, enjoying dinners together and all of that. I encourage you to continue to take care of your family. So, you know, like I said at the beginning, this is certainly not what I had envisioned, but I'm gonna face it head on. And I want all of you all to join me in facing this. I'm gonna maintain a positive outlook, and I'm gonna continue to do what I think is best for our industry. I'm excited about the leadership team we've got in place. I'm excited about the IBEC staff and volunteers and the whole team that Brian has assembled there in Raleigh, and throughout the country, both countries. And I'm excited about what this post-virus future looks like for us. I'm optimistic, and I'm optimistic for the organization and for our industry in general. So hang in there, and I look forward to seeing all of you all in person soon. And I thank you for having the confidence in me, and take care.
Thank you, Scott. I am excited to see where you'll take this thing. It appears that we have reached the end of our agenda, actually. It's just about lunchtime on my side of the planet, afternoon tea time for some, and maybe almost Miller time for others. So if there is no further interaction that's needed, Brian, I'll defer to your call on this. I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I don't think that motion can come from me, but we'll have it come from Scott or Ted or somebody.
It can come from Scott or Ted or somebody.
I will motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
I'll second, yeah.
And Jean-Guy moved on the question board. Thank you, Jean-Guy.
Thank you, Jean-Guy. All in favor? I'm not sure how we register this, but I'm gonna presume, since Scott's got his hand up, that that's executive order number 1 from President Hinesley, and we'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much for your time and your interest today, your attention. I look forward personally to seeing you all a little bit later this year, if not in Vancouver, British Columbia, then back in Houston for our rescheduled convention. Thanks. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, and
everyone.
thanks for bearing with us on this call. Much appreciated.
Thanks, everybody.